The following contains graphic images of torture. Viewer discretion is advised.
Torture devours its children, and it is, like slavery, the enemy of all humankind.
The United States does not torture. It's against our laws and it's against our values. I have not authorized it and I will not authorize it.
So they defined torture in a new way that made it very hard to commit.
In order for something to be torture, it has to cause pain of a severity so great that it would be, quote, equivalent to major organ failure or even death. His head was lowered, a cloth was placed over his face, cold water was poured on his face from a bottle, suffocation by water.
The cost of this policy of harsh interrogation and torture to our country has been enormous. It's reduced our reputation in the world. We are no longer the paragon of human rights.
Part of moving the country forward is dealing with what we've done, owning it, understanding it, and rejecting it.
The green light came from the president, the vice president, the attorney general. Everybody signed off on them who was in the top of the national security community. This was not something that happened without approval.
Clearly, crimes have been committed, serious crimes. The people who have committed those crimes must be held accountable for them. I think that's a given.
Torture. The word appears almost daily in headlines of newspapers across the country. Increasingly, Americans are asking, behind the closed doors of faraway prisons, what acts were committed in our name? Who committed these acts, and will they be held to account? Can torture be put on trial?
One of the shocks to me personally as someone working in the field of human rights in the United States after 9/11 was how fragile that norm against torture really was. You know, frankly, on September 10th, I thought, we had lots of challenges in the human rights movement, abuses that we had to tackle, norms that needed to be strengthened. I never believed that torture was one of them.
Out of the ashes of September 11th came a radical new foreign policy. While Americans grieved, top officials in the Bush administration were already crafting a plan to fight a new kind of enemy. Just days after the 9/11 attacks, Vice President Dick Cheney appeared on NBC's Meet the Press and declared a whole new set of rules.
We have to work toward the dark side, if you will. We're going to spend time in the shadows and in the intelligence world. A lot of what needs to be done here will have to be done quietly, without any discussion, using sources and methods that are available to our intelligence agencies.
Critics of the administration say that with Vice President Cheney's declaration, a new policy had taken root. A policy that would culminate in the indefinite detention of suspects outside of the U.S. justice system and their torture in U.S. custody.
What did he mean that we were going to do in the shadows? And what it meant was they basically unleashed the CIA to be the lead player in the war on terror, and they created a legal system where the U.S. government could operate outside any known sort of system of law. They were outside of international law and they were outside of domestic law. They were doing things that this country has never authorized before.
Very early on, after the first reports started coming out in the Washington Post, Dana Priest had a story quoting unnamed senior administration officials saying, we don't kick the expletive out of them, we ask other countries to do that. Or if we're not violating somebody's human rights, then we're not doing our jobs. Those kinds of things.
It began sort of step by step. What they did was they created a system of secret prisons, what they called black site prisons, that were hidden away around the world. And they also created a system of snatching people outside of the rule of law, so that they could use renditions, they called them, to pick people up, pick up suspects without any kind of legal charge, take them away, put them in these secret prisons, and interrogate them by almost any means. As Cheney said, we're going to use every means at our disposal. And what that turned out to mean was what we've since many people have come to think of as torture.
In the spring of 2002, U.S. intelligence agents in Pakistan captured Abu Zubaydah, a Palestinian-born man they described as al-Qaeda's travel agent. He was transferred to a secret CIA detention center in Thailand for interrogation. In a report made public by journalist Mark Danner years later in the New York Review of Books, the International Committee of the Red Cross documented Abu Zubaydah's treatment at the hands of the CIA.
He was, in a sense, the guinea pig for the alternative set of procedures. Over the next several months, the CIA used a number of techniques on him, beginning with a set of combined techniques to keep him from sleeping. For 3 weeks, he was kept naked, shackled to a chair, so that blisters formed on his legs from immobility. He was kept in a perfectly white room under 24-hour, very bright white light. The room was extremely cold, to the extent that one official said he seemed to keep turning blue. Noise and music were playing at a high volume 24 hours a day. And if his eyelids started to droop, an interrogator would come forward and splash cold water in his face to keep him awake. So this went on for weeks, and eventually another set of procedures after the sleep deprivation were put in place. These involved forcing him into a very small box, a small black box about 3.5 feet tall, 2 by 3 feet in area. Looping, when he came out of the box, a towel around his neck, smashing him repeatedly against the wall. Zubaydah was repeatedly beaten with punches and slaps. Eventually he was subjected to waterboarding. He was strapped to a hospital bed, a gurney. His head was lowered, a cloth was placed over his face, cold water was poured on his face from a bottle, and there ensued what the International Committee of the Red Cross calls in its chapter on this, suffocation by water. And we have very graphic descriptions of this as it was done to Abu Zubaydah and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, another of the 9/11 captives.
Did you authorize the tactics that were used against Khalid Sheikh Mohammed?
I was aware of the program, certainly, and involved in helping get the process cleared. That is, the agency, in effect, came in and wanted to know what they could and couldn't do. And they talked to me as well as others to explain what they wanted to do, and I supported it.
In hindsight, do you think any of those tactics that were used against Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and others went too far?
I don't.
And on KSM, one of those tactics, of course, widely reported was waterboarding, and that seems to be a tactic we no longer use. Even that, you think, was appropriate?
I do.
By the summer of 2006, growing accusations that the Bush administration was torturing detainees at secret locations forced the president to acknowledge for the first time that the CIA had set up secret detention facilities overseas.
And so the CIA used an alternative set of procedures. These procedures were designed to be safe, to comply with our laws, our Constitution, and our treaty obligations.
The September 6, 2006 speech was, in my opinion, the only historic speech that President Bush ever gave. It was a speech about, as he said, an alternative set of procedures. That was his phrase.
The Department of Justice reviewed the authorized methods extensively and determined them to be lawful. I cannot describe the specific methods used. I think you understand why. If I did, it would help the terrorists learn how to resist questioning and to keep information from us that we need to prevent new attacks on our country. But I can say the procedures were tough, and they were safe, and lawful, and necessary.
But in fact, it was a speech about torture, and the means by which the administration essentially legally chose, with the help of lawyers, to disguise what was torture under international law and make it into what the president called his alternative set of procedures.